Hello students, I am Professor Dr. Jyotindra Jani and welcome to my YouTube channel for the subject income tax. Dear student, let us start a practical chapter titled Income from House Property. Though it is a practical chapter, but for the subject income tax, the basic theory or the fundamental concept need to be clear. The introduction for the chapter itself is here, and the provision for the title income from house property, in a sense, that calculation of the taxable income under the title house property is laid down under the section 22 to 27 of the Income Tax Act. An individual or a person on whose name the property is registered is the owner of the house property, and he is liable to pay the income tax from such a house property. Income under this head is to be considered taxable if these conditions are satisfied. Number one, the property should consist of any building of land appertaining thereto, means even the open land attached with the building is considered as the part of the property, house property or a building. Secondly, the assessee should be the owner of this house property. Means the documentation of the property must be on the name of an individual assessee. Another important part of the condition is that the property should not have been in used by the owner for the business or the profession which is carried on by him, and the profit of such business is chargeable to income tax. Other relevant important point also to just take into consideration that ownership include both freehold and the leasehold right. It is also considered or included deemed ownership as per the section 27 of the Income Tax Act, and it is not necessary that the owner of a building also owns the plot of land on which the building is constructed, and finally the assessee must be the owner of the house property during the previous year. This is, my dear student, only the head of the income, under which notional income may be considered taxable instead of the real income. Notional means of not actual or the real. The gross income from house property is equal to the annual value of the house, and it is computed according to the provision of the Act. Certain expenses and certain deductions are also allowed under this head. According to the section 22, the annual value of the property consisting of any building or land appertaining thereto of which the assessee is the owner or deemed owner is chargeable to income tax under the head income from house property. But if any portion of such property is used by him for the purpose of any business or a profession carried on by him, and the profit of which is chargeable to income tax, then in such a case the income from such property will not be chargeable under the head income from house property. These are the different 4 points we have emerged from the explanation given under the section 22 of the Income Tax Act. The assessee must be the owner of the house property. Income from land appertaining to the building is also taxable under this head. The property should not have been used for his own business or a profession, and the income tax is assessed on the annual value and not on the actual rent. So, hope the thing is very clear. From this particular explanation, it is now absolutely clear that individual who is the owner of the house property, and if the house property is not used for his own residence or not used for his personal business or a profession, then the income derived from such property is chargeable to tax under the head income from house property. This is the nutshell of all the explanation till now that we have covered. Let us now focus on the meaning and the determination of the annual value. As already discussed, that the basis of the charge of income from house property is the annual value and not the actual rent received. Annual value of any property is deemed to be the sum for which property might reasonably be expected to let from year to year. So, the annual value is basically a notional income and not the actual income. Of course, for the computation of the annual value, we have certain steps to be followed. According to the section 23, subsection 1 to 5, the annual value has to be determined for different categories of the house property. Number one we have is that house property which is let out throughout of the previous year. Secondly, house property which is let out and remained vacant during the whole or any part of the previous year. House property which is let out during a part of the previous year, where two or more house properties are self-occupied for residential purposes. House property which is either self-occupied for residential purpose or could not actually be self-occupied owing to employment or a business at any other place. So, according to the different situation, we have to calculate the annual value of the house property. First is of calculating the gross annual value of the house property according to the section 23 subsection 1 of the Income Tax Act, where the very first thing is the property or a part of the property is let out throughout the previous year. Secondly, where the property or part of the property is let out and remained vacant for whole or a part of the previous year. House property which is let out during a part of the previous year and self-occupied for residence during the remaining period, where the assessee has self-occupied two or more house during the previous year, and finally where the property is either self-occupied for residence or not occupied during the previous year by reason of employment or carrying on business or a profession. So, according to the provision of the income tax, these are all the conditions or a situation in which we are supposed to calculate first the gross annual value and then after the net annual value of the house property. Thank you very much.